Perhaps you don't need to be a scientist to understand science. Welcome to Cranium versus Skull. Hunger, appetite, and obesity.
Cracking your cranium is Daniela Herrera, Moro, Chao, neuroscientist.
Sizzling in your skull, Leopard, musician.
So hello, Perry.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm very well.
So what do you do, Perry?
I play music, most of all. I have one group where I play my songs, another one where I work with a woman who's a cellist, we play her songs, and then another one where we do other people's songs.
So what kind of music do you play?
It's basically music that came out of the southern United States. It's, rock and country and rhythm and blues and soul and all that sort of stuff all mixed up together. And then, because of my generation, it's all through a punk rock filter. So,
Yeah.
what kind of music, when you're like the young person listening to music, 15, 20?
So I think when I started to listen to music, it was the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all kinds of, dance music.
Mm-hmm.
Skull.
And where are you from?
I'm from Mexico.
So in Europe as a whole, how long have you been here? The last 2 years in Paris, and then
Yeah, like 8 years in
8 years.
Europe. Yeah. And you?
nearly 30.
Oh, wow. Yes. So you're more French now.
Yeah. Well, I sort of think Parisian, but and I am technically French. I have a French passport.
okay.
But
Oh, he's pulled out the Je suis French card.
What are you gonna do, play Satie next?
Who do you think you are, John Paul Sartre?
Whose arc is that? Jones?
what do you do? I do
So I'm a neuroscientist.
a neuroscientist.
Yes, so that means that we make research over how the brain controls different functions of our body.
Mm-hmm. And what is what's the area your team is working on?
We studied really basic mechanisms, but we try to study these mechanisms in scenarios that are related to human diseases. So one of the human diseases we're really interested is in obesity.
Mm-hmm.
We mainly focus on neuroendocrinology.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that we are interested in studying how the brain can communicate with the different organs of our body.
Sending signals to see what's happening in the organs, and sending signals to tell the organs what to do. Is that
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So this is quite a complicated process. So it can be by different pathways. So it can be by signals that are secreted in the organs. So like humoral signals.
What kind? Sorry.
Humoral signals. So it means that they will be incorporated to your blood.
Okay.
And then in your blood they will circulate in the whole body. So they can tell messages to other organs, or mainly what we studied, which messages tell to your brain. But they can also communicate by another pathway, that is via nerves. So your brain is connected to all the organs by a system of nerves called the autonomic nervous system. So then in this way you can send a very fast signal to the organs. So in this way you can have a fast signal that goes from your brain to your organs via nerves, but you can have a slower signal that it will circulate in your blood until it reaches your brain.
And the neural, I'd assume, is two-way. You can go from the organ to the brain and
Yes,
vice versa.
exactly. Yeah.
And the one that goes through the blood goes two-way as well. It goes.
No, so your brain has a really tight communication with what goes in the brain and out the brain, because it could be very dangerous for your brain to get everything in. So there's a yes.
I feel like that most of the time.
Yeah.
I feel like that right now.
Yeah.
Like a candle in the wind, the cranium has just blown the skull's mind.
When you are lean, so thin, or when you are obese, actually this communication between your brain and organs is very different.
Can you talk a little bit about the prevalence of the problem of obesity?
Yeah, so it's really now becoming almost an epidemic disease. So the problem is not only in the US, of course, it's in the whole world now. Mainly the developed countries that where the access to food is no problem, let's say like that.
Seems to me a lot of it is cultural and especially economic, because thinking about the United States and Mexico and even Europe, which you could, you see articles saying it's getting worse. To eat cheaply for a lot of people, they have to eat things that have a great risk of obesity.
Oh yeah, it has to do a lot with education, right?
Yeah.
Or how
which also
yeah.
has an
Yes.
economic component too. If you're
Yes, but the problem, of course, starts there. It's a socioeconomical problem. But of course, once you put your body into this environment, your body has to adapt and has to try to make the best it can for your survival. So that's where the problem starts, because you actually start changing your physiology. So it's very difficult for these people to actually have enough motivation to keep doing that, because your body is telling you otherwise all the time.
Makes me think about very old Woody Allen movie Sleeper, where he is in a coma or something, or frozen. I forget what the reason is, but he wakes up hundreds or thousands, very, very far into the future, and learns that you should smoke lots of cigars and drink lots of whiskey and eat lots of steak to be healthy. Maybe that's an evolutionary thing. Maybe we'll adapt to
Yes, definitely.
fast food, and a lot of people will suffer in the meantime.
No, yeah, but
Buck!
And they don't believe the dogs. They don't believe the dogs. Look at them sitting there.
When you're doing work of this nature, is it something you have in your mind? How are public health agencies going to use it? How are drug companies going to use it? How is it going to be picked up in the popular press?
Yeah, of course. So, of course, for a scientist to do science, it needs money. And to do this, the money, you get it from certain foundations or from the government. So actually, it has been, now scientists are really pushed to think about the necessity of the population in order to get money. And that has created a whole different environment in the science, where scientists have to be more involved to actually where your research is going. Because if you are not able to explain that what you're doing has a meaning for the population, you have a lot of problems to get the money to do that.
Or what kind of feelings you have about the different sort of pressures? Because on the government side, you're going to have political pressures, because they're going to have things for one reason or another they want to push forward.
Of course.
And then obviously on the
no, definitely.
commercial side, it's a very different
This is a conversation we have all the times between colleagues, and this is a reality. I mean, there are now really a priority of which research people are investing on, and that priority comes from, of course, public health. So where the main diseases are, that's where the main money is.
What about the commercial side, from drug makers or?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the pressures is like the government side that will invest also in basic research, but commercial side will be all kinds of pharmaceuticals and they of course it's a business, so they want to invest in things that will be that will benefit them. But there are also a lot of pharmaceuticals that invest in long-term science. But it's also, it's very complex, but it has to be also with the political structure of the country where you're doing it, etc.
But is it nature or is it nurture?
Is it God or is it a woman? What's the difference?
Ariana Grande has some comments on that.
Even if the way you live your whole time, it will impact the next generations, for example. If you, for example, if the mother have that kind of behavior for a long time, it already is it will be influence the genes of their children. So that's already known. For example,
on a genetic level.
Yes.
Wow.
So, for example, what is known is that the environment where so it's a genetic thing, but also the environment where they grew up, like the influence the womb. That, for example, if the parents were diabetic or morbid obese, then you actually, the child has a much higher probability to develop very easy that during his life, even if it changes his lifestyle. So it's just a way of our body to adapt to our environment. The problem is that the environment has become a risk for it.
Oh, she just hit him with a Simone de Beauvoir power slam.
Now's your chance. Get him while he's down. Get him while he's down.
So your blood travels via vessels, right, during your whole. So the same way the blood will travel to your brain. So then there's a barrier in your brain that is called the blood-brain barrier. So not everything. So many of the things will be blocked by this barrier. It's a physical barrier.
Right.
So then what we studied is, what other people have found is that there's certain parts of your brain that are actually less protected than others, which means that they have more contact with what's going on in your blood. So these areas we call circumventricular organs.
Ooh, big word.
Is that a noun pounded into the ground?
You say the word again?
Yeah, circumventricular organs.
Circumventricular?
Yeah, yes. So it's more or less the same mechanism as blood traveling to your brain. It's just that it's filtered when it's passed to your brain. So these areas I was talking about, the circumventricular organs, there are areas that are around the ventricle. That's why it's called circum from Latin. So it's like around the ventricles. And then because they are around the ventricles, they are able to sense better what's going on in the ventricle than an area that is away from the ventricle.
Right.
So what is the difference between these areas that are where the barrier is a little bit more open versus the areas that are away from the ventricle where the barrier is very tight?
Right.
So and how these areas can talk back to your body.
What sort of things determine those sort of gateways, those sort of blocks around the outside? Is it? I would imagine there's some sort of signal that says, okay, keep this out and let this in.
When you're hungry, these spaces in the barrier changes. So glucose, for example, is a very important signal for the cells of your brain, because the energy they produce, it mainly comes from glucose. So the brain needs to have his first priority is to get glucose. So and glucose comes from your liver. So then there's a lot of mechanisms that your brain has to talk to your liver to be sure that there's a lot of glucose there. So then when the liver processes the glucose, it will go to your blood, it will circulate in your blood, and it will get to your brain. When you're hungry, this barrier in the brain changes conformation. Actually, when you're hungry, it opens a little bit, so it allows that there's more glucose passage to your brain.
That is food for thought. Or is it thought for food?
I think those who fought for food thought that food would be for thought, and it did become for thought. And that's why everyone's so hungry, because we have all of this imaginary food.
If only we could eat thoughts.
If only we could eat money that turn into thoughts that then when we vomit, turn them back into money.
Or we eat food that is thoughts and then we fart them out.
Sounds like you might have a chicken and the egg sort of situation, because to do what you were just saying, to allow more glucose in, there had to be a prior signal to say, I'm hungry.
Yes, definitely.
So,
and that signal also comes from your organs. One of them, for example, is how empty your stomach is. But it can also be that when they are distended, your stomach, for example, you secrete the stomach cells and the intestine cells will secrete some signals that will go to your blood and then will reach your brain. So all these things we call the short-term signals versus the long-term signals. So the short-term signals will have a fast message, right?
and be mostly neural, I imagine, or
Yes, exactly.
or uniquely neural.
Yes, exactly. And the long-term signals, that is when they are secreted, and then it will reach your brain, right? And these kind of signals give a different message to your brain. The short-term signal will decrease the meal size. So instead of eating a whole piece of cake, you will start eating smaller pieces. Or you can, the long-term signals will more stop the ingestion, so you will not eat more cake.
And what's the area that you focus on within that greater sort of
And so we are focused more on how the brain can control your food intake and how you spend that energy that you consume. And so that area is called the hypothalamus. But it is very conserved, so you can study in different species, and actually the mechanisms of action will be very similar to a human. So
because it's so old in the evolutionary history.
Exactly. And it is because actually mediates very basic needs. So it communicates with your body to know when you need energy, when you have enough energy, and how you're going to spend that energy.
This isn't a staring competition. Get in there! Get in there!
Get in there! This isn't marriage counseling. Show your teeth.
Yeah!
The ones underneath your belt.
Yeah!
Break the chair!
Right. So in reference to this problem of obesity, has there been growth within your field or a change within your field in response to that? Or?
Yeah, of course. So because we know that the communication between your body and your brain during obesity is different. So when you understand how that is different, you can try to change it to help these mechanisms to help people to become lean again. Right? So that's what has been done also by many groups. So actually there's a lot of medicines that have been developed from this and that are already in the market to help obese people and diabetic people to get better, so to help them lose weight and to improve their health. So those kind of things take a lot of time. So you first need to understand how it works so that you can try to change it or modify it.
Where you work, that is an objective to public awareness, talking to people?
No, not really. I think it's something we have to modify. It's not all about staying in your lab all day, and it's also about have a meaning of what you're doing. So do you think it was clear, the explanation?
Yes, yeah. No, I enjoyed talking to you. It was very nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. It's really nice to have an opportunity to actually explain this to people that are not in the scientific environment.
Join us next time.
Join us next time.
Cranium versus Skull.